So today we're focusing on the Invacare Platinum 10 rebuild of the compressor, the Thomas compressor. Once you work on a 10 liter, all the compressors are relatively the same with some minor differences here and there. We start with the 10 because it does have a few extra features inside in here on the flaps underneath, which we'll get into a little further down the video. But for starters, we're going to get going on this. So to begin, we go ahead and we have the connections that I've already taken off, which would be up here. We just loosen them up, leave that down there, as well as over here. It's already up. I like to leave it up here, loosen it up, leave it dangling, so you have no issues about relocating that later on, putting it on and forgetting about it. So we go ahead and disconnect the tubing here, tubing here. And I've already gone ahead and loosened the Phillips head down here. And then there's, as you can see, that is a 10 millimeter socket. It's already disconnected. So we can just go ahead and just a little finagling, take that out. Now your capacitor, normally there's a few tie wraps here. I've already cut those off. Go ahead and cut them. You can leave the capacitor on here. Then you have your two connectors. Just wiggle them off. It does not matter to make sure which one came off of which. They are reversible and they can go on. When you go back to put them back on, they can be put on in either terminal. So then up here we have the connection. Just go ahead and pull that apart, pull that down through. So now, right now, your compressor is completely separated from the unit. It's just still sitting in here. So we can go ahead and pull that out. Move your unit to the side. Now, before we go any further, you always want to make sure that this is in the front because that's how we just pulled it out of the unit. We want to go ahead and mark the compressor before you do anything, so you know as you're working on it the pieces in the middle, because this is the top and then you have an individual piece here, individual here, and then this is the bottom, obviously the compressor, which stays together. As we get further into the video, you'll understand why we are marking them like this, to not reverse and then you have suction, and instead of it sucking in, it end up blowing out, and then when you go to turn the compressor back on, it's going to appear as the compressor is seized up because the fan won't blow. You won't have anything going on. So once we get started here, it's a T25 on the end, and we initially crack the screws loose by hand. As you get better and better with it down the road, you can use a drill to remove it, but never a drill to put them back in. So we don't want any cross threading. If that happens, the compressor is basically shot at that point. Okay, once you have all the screws removed or loose, you can remove them. It doesn't have to stay in any order of where you pull them out of, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, before I go any further on removing this, I just want to stop and take note of the label that's on here. The label will signify the type of compressor it is. So this is a Thomas compressor, which down at the bottom it does say that Thomas and Thomas products. Okay, and then if you're ever wondering, like you had this compressor sitting around not in a unit and you're like, man, like did it come out of a 5 liter, did it come out of a 10 liter? Just a quick way to look at that, it's got the amperage written on it somewhere on the label. It may not be always at the top, but it will be on the label somewhere. This is a 5.5, so you know it's a 10 liter. A 5 liter would have a 4.5 or a 4.8. Don't ever use one or the other for the different unit. For a 5 liter compressor, it will not allow a 10 liter to get up to the proper liters per minute. It just won't hold. And then the opposite, where you just don't want to waste a 10 liter compressor on a 5 liter unit where it can do double the work, and it's just not cost effective having that in there. So, just to move forward, again, this is how the unit came, this is how the compressor came out of the unit. So we still have this in the front, and we're going to come ahead and take this off the top since it's already loose. Boom. Okay. So now we'll put that right down here. We're actually just going to put this to the side for the moment. That's all right that this fell out. We're going to work on that in a few. We're going to focus on this in the beginning. So we're going to be working on here. These are your rings. So these can pop right out. These are, you could tell, are very worn. They black on the inside. If you ran your finger, it'd be very rigid. And these get replaced. So we're going to put them to the side. They you can collect them, recycling, whatever you please. And now this is where we're going to be working on next. We're going to crack these screws loose and pull these out. This is a T25 as well. So these are very tight, which they're supposed to be. Let's use a different. So if you can't get the leverage, or if it's just tight and the ratchet you're using isn't allowing you to break them loose, you can use the heat gun as well. We suggest that because there is Loctite on these bolts on the threads, so it makes them very difficult at times. So you just get some good leverage. And this one relatively came off pretty easy. Now you do not have to put Loctite back on them, it's fine. So now comes, you remove this, and then this black piece is your piston cup. This is going to get thrown out, you no longer need it. So we're going to come over to the new parts that I have sitting on the table here, and you're going to match that up. So this is your piston cup. These are your piston rings. This is your round, your ring gaskets, and then this is your square gasket. You also have 4 metal flanges, which we'll get into when we start doing all this stuff over here on that. But for now, we're going to take this, we're going to toss that, we don't need that one. We're going to take one of our piston rings, piston cup, piston cup. And this piece here, you're going to notice has that little mark on it. That will always be facing the back. Now, underneath, you'll have this little, not really sure how to explain that little nipple. It will line up and sit into right there. The trick is you need to have this in here first. Okay. So then you'll take this. Now this has a slight curve. You want that to sit in your ring here, just like that. So you want it to be curved up. As you can see, it's going to be curving up because you're going to push it down into this, and it's going to push down. And it's going to create more of that squared off edge to create the compression as the pistons go up and down. So like I said, we're going to line up this nipple inside to here, and you will feel it push down. You kind of got to center it, so it's going to be a little tedious. It's much easier when you do it in person. You get used to it. So you want to lay it as best you can evenly around the piston ring. As you can see, we're centered up. And then you're going to do your best. You want to kind of guide it with your fingers, but your two thumbs, hold it from the middle, and then push down firmly and hard. And you're going to be able to spin this. You shouldn't be able to spin this. It should lock into place. Okay, so just hold that down. Then come back with that screw that we removed earlier with that little bit of Loctite on it. Like I said, you don't have to worry about putting fresh Loctite on there. It will seal itself down. As for tightening, you definitely want to get it, it's pretty much going to bottom out. I mean, you're going to get it tight, and then once you can't go anymore, just try to give it that little extra, but you don't want to strip. Just be careful because you don't want to strip the screw. So that one's set. So we can move on to the next one here. Let's just grab this. We need to remove this one because that's still the old one. So here we are. Some good leverage. There we go. And again, if you're having difficulty and your ratchet, you can't get it loose, by all means go ahead, use the heat gun, heat it up. You don't have to worry about accidentally melting anything. You're just going to want to heat around this. I mean, you're going to end up heating up the screw, which is fine. And this is getting replaced anyway. So you don't need to worry about melting this or getting this soft and disforming, because it will start to like wrinkle around the edges depending on how much you heat it up. The only thing to be aware of is the plastic fan. That if you're coming to the side to heat up, that can become an issue. But I recommend just staying to the top. And at that point, you shouldn't have any problems heating it up well enough. You'll get the hang of it once you're doing it enough. You'll understand, or you get a feel for how hot you need to heat it up for it to come loose. So remove this. I'll grab this other piston ring. Sorry, piston cup. This is your piston cup. Get that set up. Again, you have this little notch that symbolizes the back. Again, with this notch, this little tit, you'll match it up with that notch in there. Just make sure that you put your piston ring on first, otherwise it won't work. Again, let's lay it right on the top. Kind of just get it even. You want to make sure you keep that force to the center, because once you start going to the sides or out or further, you can shift the cup and then it's just not going to sit well inside the ring and you'll have some leaking. See, just like that, it kind of just shifted out of place. That's why you want to just keep it gentle, right to the center, and boom. Now you're in. As you see, me trying to twist it, it doesn't twist around. It's snug, so that piece, that little nipple is inside its slot there. Go ahead and screw this back in and tighten it down. Nice and snug. We're good to go there. All right, as you see, this one looks a little popped up. I mean, that's nothing to be worried about. Just like in any other compressor, pistons, they're going to move alternate of each other. So just make sure that before you do anything, go further from here, just make sure they're both pushed down and they're flat. They're not lodged inside because they can get stuck and not sit flat. So those are good. So now we can slide this to the back and bring this forward. Get working on this. So as we get started here, we're going to work on one side first and leave the other side set as is, so you have a reference point to look back if you get a little confused or anything. You have some guidance that you can go back to. And again, that is why we mark the pieces with the marker, so you know exactly where they go. Because once you start working on them, you're spinning them around, you're doing stuff, you're flipping them over, and then you forget your reference point. So at that, you'll always know where you're going once everything's back together. So we'll start on this round side. We'll go ahead and use our 1/4 inch to remove this screw. Now the 10-liter compressors have a metal flap that you will save. So this is a square washer. It has one side of it is slanted with a cut with like a slant on it. You have to make sure that is in a particular location, fashion, when it's tightened back down, because then it allows the flap and the flange to bend up when it's when the pressure through the unit is being blown through. It allows it to bend up, whereas the other side is completely flat. It's cut at a normal 90-degree angle, and so it just prevents that. So you just got to make sure when you see it, you'll understand better. There's a little label on the back, not label, but it's etched into the square washer. It says up, so you know which side to face up. It's very difficult to see in the video, but in person you'll understand. So we're going to get rid of this metal flange. It's garbage, no longer needed. We're going to come over, grab a new one. So this will always be on the bottom. Then you have your flapper, which and then from there we have our square washer. Make sure the up symbol is facing up, and then for a reference point, that's always the up where it's etched into the washer is always going to be back left of where your flange is facing. So the flange is facing this way. It's in the back right, not back left, back right. It's right here where it says up. So at least you know at that point your square washer is in the right location, allowing that 45-degree angle that's cut into it to allow the flapper to go up and down. So hand tighten it so you're not cross-threading anything. Okay, so then once you do that, you get it lined up, get all the pieces laying on top of each other, right in a row, just like that. And then we will take 12mm wrench, specifically a 12 because it goes around this square spacer, a square washer perfectly, and it allows you to hold it and get it tight. Now these screws aren't to be like super tight, and like, yes, you don't want them loose, but you don't want to over tighten because you will just snap them and they will just render the piece useless. So then we would end up not being able to use this, and then you're wasting another compressor to try to get it up and running. So just don't over tighten them, get them nice and snug, and you'll feel it. It does bottom out. So then next we can replace this washer or this gasket. Just pop that right out. And then we'll come over and grab another oh my gosh, another gasket. So these, they go in relatively easy, but if you try to just put it in with your finger like that, it's just going to roll its way out. So that's why I just kind of hold it in two separate spots. The more you do it, the better feel you'll get for it. The more easier you'll find your own way of doing it. But boom, very simple. Now, since this is on the right side, this one's done here. We're going to flip it over. We're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to loosen up that screw. We're going to toss this, but make sure that we keep the flapper. Come over and get a new flange. So we have that. The flapper goes on top. And then our square washer. Make sure that the up is facing up and that 45-degree angle is down towards these flappers. So I don't know if you can see that in the video. You can kind of see it. So then I screw back in, and then again just hand tighten or hand start it. And go ahead, get everything lined back up, and make sure the way you're looking at it from right here, the up etching is in the top left, the way we're looking at it right here. So it says up right in this corner here, which is perfect. It's where you want it. It allows this front piece to be at its 45 to allow this flap to flip up when that air pressure is coming through. Let's go ahead and just get that snug. Take your 12mm wrench, just kind of even everything out. Okay, get it straight as possible. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to make sure it's covered. Give that a little snug twist, and that's all set. So now that you know this is the front, you got your marks on it. You know this is the bottom because that's your rings right here. Boom. We could place that right on the unit, and you'll see that this hole and this hole in the middle will line up with this one and this one. Boom. You're good. Now we're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to start replacing those flanges. We could throw this out. So just going to repeat the process over here. Throw that out. Take the new flange with the flapper. So you have those. Now our square washer, screw, boom, set up there. It's very important just to hand start these. Again, you don't want to cross thread anything. Just, you know, be tedious now, and things will be easier as you go along and get better with it down the road. Straighten them out and just give it a nice little snug twist, and you're good to go. And as you can see in this, it says up right there. Then you have your square washer, your flapper, and then your metal flange. And then you can kind of see that's got the 45 there, so that's a good reference there. Now go ahead and take out this gasket. Put the new one in. All right, so that's good. Now we could flip it over and start on the other side and do the exact same thing. Pull out this, we know it's no good. It's extremely flat, you know, they're brittle, they break, you know, so you know it's time to be replaced. Again, just very repetitive. You just got to keep in sync and just know the sides that you've done already. So that's why we just do one at a time. And also so you just have a reference point in case you get a little confused. Again, flapper, your flange. Also helps to have a magnetic tip on any sort of screwdriver or flathead just to help you in getting stuff off the table. Also, if this happens to be very clean, not too much debris in there, there's times where these will be black. I do suggest just giving it a little wipe down with some cleaner. Don't scrub it with anything like a Brillo pad or anything like that, because it will affect the flush and can create gaps. So just give it a little clean down with some alcohol or simple green, whatever you have accessible to you. But yeah, don't use any type of rough pads or anything like that. Okay, as you see, this side was rebuilt. We just did this side. It's a little off, I mean, but that's not going to affect it, so you're good. Okay, now we have that in. Look for the sides that are marked. Here we go, 1, 2. We know this is the left side that we just worked on. So as you can see, our marks are lining up here, 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 and here. So for this final step to get this back on, you have these two rectangular squarish gaskets that sit right on top. Now there are times that they come in the packages and they're not completely flat and they're wrinkled and they're pinched and they look weird. Just do your best if you have to take them out, flatten them, have them under a book or something. There's times where, as you can see, it doesn't want to sit flush. So to fix that, instead of just like trying to stick something in or flatten it out a few times, just a little trick we can do here. So we'll take the cover, so we know this is the front again. That's why we mark. I know it's very repetitive, but makes life simple and not having to remember. So we go ahead and we'll just try to gently place that on the top without moving it too much, and then kind of just put your weight and push it down. And then when you pick this back up, you will see some of them. These two gaskets are pretty good, but you'll see sometimes it just kind of pushes it in and creates that pressure, so it flattens out the gasket, so you know it's going on smooth and there's no gaps and it's not going to cause any leaks. So now at this point, we are all set to now go ahead and put these screws back in. Again, doesn't matter which one goes back in which. As I stated earlier, you can't go wrong. The only time you can go wrong is if you do not do these by hand and you cross thread them. So I go ahead and use my T25, and then just by hand I go snug. So as you're tightening these down, don't tighten it all the way down one by one. Get them all like close to, just getting the pressure on it. I find that if you back it out and reverse it, and then it kind of feels the threads pop, and then you go, clockwise, and you'll start to thread it. It'll be easy. So the pattern, you never want to do all four, 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to go zigzag. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back the opposite. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means you get a level pressure down on the gasket evenly all the way through. So you're not just tightening one side and you're not getting the other side correct. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, these are just, just getting them down snug, because you're going to come back with the ratchet and tighten everything up. And again, you never want to use a drill on this part, just because you cross thread, you just wasted the entire time rebuilding this compressor, and then this compressor is no longer good. Just make sure you go back and just snug them all down, because they're going to be looser as you. Now you can go ahead and use your ratchet and do the same thing. You just be careful again about over tightening. They will bottom out, but once they bottom out, just try to give it a little turn, and then you're good. And now we have just completed a 10-liter rebuild.